Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing the recent Q1 delivery numbers that were unveiled. Tesla misses analyst expectations, as well as Elon's recent Twitter purchase. So with that, let's get after it. Taking a look at Tesla's Q1 delivery numbers, we see they produced over 305,000 vehicles while delivering just over 310,000 total vehicles in the quarter. Now, looking back at Q4 of 2021, which was their highest recorded delivery output to date, Tesla actually broke that record this quarter. And while historically Tesla typically sees a drop-off in total deliveries from Q4 to Q1, this year they actually increased that number. So that's good news, right? Well, unfortunately, in the eyes of some investors, Tesla missed analyst expectations for the first time in a while. However, this doesn't account for the Giga Shanghai shutdown due to the recent COVID outbreak and China's zero COVID tolerance policy, which is still ongoing at the time of recording. But to bring it back to Tesla's delivery numbers, there are two aspects of this image that need to be considered: deliveries and production. When looking at the rate of Tesla's production, we can pull out a calculator and do a little bit of elementary level math equations, so hopefully this won't explode too many brains watching this. So we know that Giga Shanghai has been shut down for COVID since at least the 22nd of March, but keep in mind, was also shut down to celebrate the Chinese New Year, which removed another week or so of production. So let's call it an even 2 weeks of missed production. All right, so to calculate the effect this had on Tesla's production numbers, we start by dividing 52 weeks in a year by 4 quarters. There are about 13 weeks per quarter, which means removing 2 weeks leaves us with 11 weeks of production for Q1. Before we go any further, it's important to note that over half of Tesla's current production, up until about a week or so ago when Giga Berlin came online, over half of their production comes out of the Giga Shanghai factory. Why is this important? Taking the 305,000 total vehicles produced in Q1 and dividing that in half leaves us with about 150,000 or so vehicles coming out of Shanghai. Well, if you divide that number by 11, the number we arrive at is over 13.5 thousand vehicles produced per week. Why is that important? Multiplying 13,500 by 2 brings us to over 27,000 vehicles. If you add that to the 305,000 total vehicles produced, assuming Tesla was running a full quarter, they would have produced over 332,000 total vehicles in Q1, absolutely shattering the previous record. Analysts expected between 312 to 317,000 deliveries. So even had they been accounting for the new year, Tesla still would have achieved close to 320,000 vehicles produced if it weren't for the COVID restrictions. This represents about a 5% growth in production between quarters with no added production capacity from Berlin or Austin. To me, this shows that Tesla is continuing to improve upon their efficiencies to produce vehicles at their current facilities, which will only bode well for them when future factories begin coming online. So, switching gears here a bit, some of you may have heard about Elon's recent purchase of a stake in Twitter, making him the single largest shareholder in the company and providing him a seat on the board. Now, before I provide my thoughts, I'm curious to know what you think about this. Does Elon buying a board seat sit right with you? No pun intended. Should this sort of billionaire leisurely purchase be allowed? What do you think the implications of this might be? Do you think this will take away from Elon's ability to focus on his other endeavors such as Tesla and SpaceX? Feel free to take a second by pausing the video and letting me know down in the comments. But to me, this seems like a no-brainer for Elon. Currently, the man has a significant voice and, in my opinion, an extremely positive influence on our world, one that should live under no threat of being silenced. As we've seen in the past, there aren't many people who are above being canceled by social media platforms. Even the former president of the United States isn't immune to being silenced. Whether you love the man or hate him, he has the right to participate in civic discussion, just as you or I or anyone else should have that right, despite our ability to agree or disagree. To tie this point into the topic of conversation, as some of you may be aware, back in 2018, Elon was in deep with the SEC over a tweet about him considering taking Tesla private. At the time, this was a pretty big deal. The SEC alleged that Elon was manipulating the market and subsequently sued him for it. Quote, "The SEC's complaint alleges that in truth, Musk had not discussed specific terms with any potential financing partners, and he allegedly knew that the potential transaction was uncertain and subject to numerous contingencies. According to the SEC's complaint, Musk's tweet caused Tesla's stock price to jump by over 6% on August 7th and led to significant market disruption. In the suit, they sought to ban him from serving as an officer of a public company, and as part of a $20 million settlement, they also required his tweets to first be approved by the board. I mean, seriously, this all actually happened, and during one of the most difficult times in Tesla's company history. They were going through production hell with the Model 3 ramp and on the verge of bankruptcy. These were such desperate times, in fact, that Elon was sleeping in conference rooms at the factory in an effort to work as much as possible working on the lines. Crazy times. He later admitted to accepting the settlement as a means to keep the company alive, not because he was guilty of any wrongdoing. More on this in a minute. Now, I don't think the implications of this are quite obvious, so allow me to explain in a simpler, more abstract manner that folks like you and I can relate to, because who could ever relate to a billionaire? So here it goes. You ready? A person is talking to his friends, minding his own business, literally. A group of people overhear him and don't like or agree with what he's saying, so they approach him. The group then bullies the person and steals his lunch money, then forces him to stop talking to his friends. You see where I'm going with this? Now, with all of this in mind, there's absolutely no way that the government could have ever been wrong, could they? I mean, surely they wouldn't have lied or misled the public in any way, right? Now, I know what you're thinking. Willie, those aren't the same bodies as the government. That doesn't count. But I mean, they absolutely could not be wrong. But maybe. Anyways, who knows? Perhaps those of you watching this will look into it a bit. But back to Elon purchasing Twitter. So to me, again, this is important. There have been many voices silenced because of other people's inabilities to comprehend the idea of free speech. Sometimes we may hear or even see things we don't like or don't agree with. Unfortunately, it's inevitable. It comes with the territory. The idea is, however, that by allowing everyone a voice, the good ideas people have will flourish if given the opportunity, while bad ideas will hopefully falter. It's easy to argue from the standpoint of being in agreement with an idea, but if we only allow a particular thought process or a specific dialect to occur, what do you do when you don't agree? Suffer? If free speech doesn't exist, how does one express their displeasures with slavery? And if free speech doesn't exist, how do we call out bad actors who are raping women and molesting children? Because if you give the power to someone to tell you what you can and cannot say, any bad actor in a position of authority, which isn't common at all, I know, has the power to dictate what words can and cannot be said. Like and see my point? This is not to say that bad ideas won't arise from freedom of speech, such as aiming to limit the very freedom that affords those people to express those views. But the hope and belief is that better ideas will prosper. But again, these are just my opinions, and I think Elon purchasing Twitter was a strategic move, not only for his own benefit, but for the benefit of everyone in our society. Kind of like most of his other businesses, huh? So to recap this video, Tesla absolutely crushed their Q1 production and delivery numbers, all things considered. Despite missing analyst predictions from a delivery standpoint, Tesla's production run rate is higher than analyst expectations, which is a major catalyst for the company. And finally, with Elon's purchase of Twitter, he may have just saved free speech for another day. But that'll do it for this one, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to like and let me know what you think down in the comments. What are your thoughts on Elon essentially purchasing a seat on Twitter's board? Would you be excited to see an edit button in the future? Thanks for tuning in. Holla at you on the next one. Peace.